Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon, Sarah. Welcome. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Sarah? You will be watching the video called ENRON Corporation Scandal from now until 3:15. At 3:15, we will have a discussion on the learning points from the video. Okay. Good afternoon, Intan. Can you hear me?
Hi, chị Kian.
Okay, good. Welcome. Now we will start off by watching the documentary called ENRON Corporation, which is actually in chapter 2 of your lecture notes. Kita akan bincangkan at about 3:15. So we will start about 2. You can see the video documentary on the scandal that caused the change in the auditing and auditors profession and also accounting profession. Ini scandal yang terbesar. So when other people turn up, we will start with the documentary, okay?
Banyak kan mau angkat dulu.
two plus maybe. Then we will resume our class discussion on this. Now, this will be part of your class assignment, okay, for ENRON Corporation. We will now. ENRON scandal merujuk kepada satu siri aktiviti penipuan dan manipulasi perakaunan yang berlaku di syarikat tenaga ENRON Corporation pada awal 2000-an, year 2000. ENRON pernah dianggap sebagai salah satu syarikat terbesar dan paling berjaya di Amerika Syarikat. Tapi ia akhirnya menjadi bankrupt pada tahun 2001. Skandal ini melibatkan pelbagai amalan tidak beretika, termasuk penggunaan entiti tujuan khas SPE atau SPE, Special Purpose Entity, untuk menyembunyikan hutang dan melambung keuntungan. ENRON mencipta perkongsian luar kunci kira yang membolehkannya menyimpan hutang daripada penyata kewangannya, menjadikan syarikat itu kelihatan lebih menguntungkan daripada yang sebenarnya. Perkongsian ini digunakan untuk manipulasi, to manipulate, to manipulate pendapatan dan menipu, cheat, pelabur dan analis. Firm perakaunan, the auditing firm Arthur Andersen juga terlibat dalam skandal ini. Auditing firm ini dituduh menggoyak dokumen dan menghalang keadilan semasa penyiasatan terhadap amalan perakaunan ENRON. Arthur Andersen akhirnya menghadapi tuduhan jenayah, criminal charges, dan keluar dari perniagaan, went out of business because it lost the license. Kejatuhan daripada skandal ENRON adalah ketara. Beribu-ribu pekerja kehilangan pekerjaan dan pelabur kehilangan berbilion dolar. Skandal ini juga membawa kepada peningkatan to raise the standard of accounting and auditing, mengakibatkan kelulusan Akta Sarbanes-Oxley, otherwise known as SOX pada tahun 2002. Malaysia juga mengikut dan kita ada similar acts for the Capital Market Services Act 2007 yang bertujuan untuk menambah baik tabik urus corporate governance dan pelaporan kewangan, reporting financial statements. So auditors are being held accountable and given a lot of responsibility under the new act. Skandal perakaunan ENRON sering dilihat sebagai titik perubahan utama dalam corporate governance and ethics. So it raised the standard of accountability for auditors as well as directors and as well as other professionals. It marked the turning point for the auditing profession and accounting profession. So we will watch the ENRON documentary until about two plus maybe. Then we will resume our class discussion on this. Now, this will be part of your class assignment, okay, for ENRON Corporation. We will now commence to watch the video. I've put in the Bahasa BM subtitles for those who have some difficulty listening to the American accent, okay?
is he building in there? What the hell is he building in there?
It had taken Enron 16 years to go from about 10 billion of assets to 65 billion of assets. It took them 24 days to go bankrupt.
What the hell is he building in there?
This company collapsed so quickly and so entirely. I mean, it was into bankruptcy within a matter of weeks. It just immediately had all the makings of a gigantic scandal.
He's hiding something from the rest of us.
The fatal flaw at Enron, if there was one, you say it was pride. But then it was arrogance, intolerance, greed.
So many of them were blinded by the money, that they didn't see that they were sinking their own lifeboat.
We have a right to know.
It just got hungrier and hungrier. Sooner or later, they were doomed to go off that cliff at 90 miles an hour.
It's astounding that they got away with it for so long. In reality, Enron was a house of cards.
What we didn't know is that the house of cards had been built over a pool of gasoline. It all sort of became smoke and mirrors.
Committee will come to order. This is a case of America's largest corporate bankruptcy. The question here is what happened, who was responsible for it happening, and what can we do to prevent this sort of thing from happening again?
I think the Enron story is so fascinating because people perceive it as a story that's about numbers, that it's somehow about all these complicated transactions. But in reality, it's a story about people, and it's really a human tragedy.
Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, Yes, the strong gets more, while the weak ones fade. Empty pockets don't ever make the grave. Mama may have, Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own, Money, you got lots of friends crowding round the door. When you're gone and spending ends.
On this date at 2:23 a.m., Sugarland Police discovered John C. Baxter located inside his vehicle with an apparent gunshot wound to the head. At this time, there has been a suicide note located.
Sort of, can you give us any indication whether this was related to Enron's bankruptcy?
We do know he was an Enron employee, but as far as any other indications of why he committed suicide, no, we do not.
Mr. Skilling, let me touch on something that's sort of sad, and that's, of course, the suicide of Cliff Baxter. And you mentioned he was your best friend in your opening statement. Before he died, did you have many conversations with him?
Yes.
And were any of them relative to Enron?
Yes. There's no one that knew Cliff toward the end that didn't realize that he was heartbroken by what had happened. And Cliff came over to my house and he said, they're calling us child molesters. He says that will never wash off.
But Mr. Skilling, you don't believe that.
I don't believe what?
You don't believe that the press and everybody calling Cliff Baxter or yourself or anybody on the board of directors denigrating or tainting you, you don't think it's accurate. It's what you're saying to us here today.
I do not believe I did not do anything wrong that was not in the interest. And all the time that I worked for Enron Corporation, it was in the interest of the shareholders of the company.
Ultimately, who was responsible for the downfall of Enron? Only a few years ago, Enron was the nation's 7th largest corporation, valued at almost $70 billion. Pundits praised the company as a new business model. This trading floor was manned by America's best and brightest, charting the futures of energy and power. And high above each with a private staircase, Ken Lay and Jeff Skilling had built their own plush staterooms. They were known as the smartest guys in the room, captains of a ship too powerful to ever go down.
In the Titanic, the captain went down with the ship. In Enron, it looks to me like the captain first gave himself and some friends a bonus, then lowered himself and the top folks down in the lifeboat, and then hollered up and said, by the way, everything's going to be just fine.
Like Skilling, Ken Lay said he hadn't done anything wrong.
Working through quickly, CNN. Really not this morning. Thank you.
Beyond the financial issues, some suspected a political conspiracy. Enron had been the largest corporate contributor to the first presidential campaign of George W. Bush.
This is not a political issue. It is a business issue. You know, Enron had made contributions to a lot of people around Washington, D.C. And if they came to this administration looking for help, they didn't find any.
To say no help here is like I did not have political relations with that man, Mr. Lay.
What about the fact that George W. Bush calls Ken Lay Kenny Boy?
That's my nickname for my husband, which he overheard.
So it wasn't original with the president?
Certainly wasn't.
According to published reports, your husband earned about $300 million in compensation and stocks from Enron over the last 4 years. What happened to all that money?
It's gone. It's gone. There's nothing left.
Will. This is the shredded evidence we got that came out of Enron. We very quickly determined that the insiders had sold off $1 billion of their stock in the preceding several months.
Did you convert stock worth $66 million?
I don't know, but I don't.
Would that be surprising to you to learn that you did that?
No, that would not be surprising.
Mr. Fasto got only $30 million in stock proceeds from Enron, but he took another $30 million out with his side deals.
I think there was just an immediate sense of outrage at Lay and Skilling and Fastow when people realized how much they had profited and how completely artificial the appearance of this company had been.
News of shredding at Enron raised more questions. What answers were lost in the torn documents? 20,000 employees had lost their jobs. $2 billion in pensions and retirement funds had disappeared. Was Enron the work of a few bad men or the dark shadow of the American dream?
Lay comes to the story of Enron from very humble roots.
My father was a Baptist minister, and he was ordained a Baptist minister while I was very young, probably 2 or 3 years old.
Ken Lay was a Baptist preacher's son in a family that had been poor all its life. And he, throughout his life, worked several jobs as a kid, and clearly had in mind that things could be better and wanted things to be better, and had a huge ambition to make wealth for himself. He told a story later about sitting on a tractor dreaming about the world of business and how different it could be from the way things were for him and his family. Lay was a PhD in economics, and he became very early on a real apostle for deregulation. He was way ahead of the curve on this. He was thinking about energy markets that would be deregulated, and in particular, a natural gas industry that was shackled by regulation. And he pushed aggressively in Washington to change all of that.
Who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man.
In Washington, Lay became part of a new crusade to liberate businessmen from the rules and regulations of government.
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. The societies which have achieved the most spectacular, broad-based economic progress in the shortest period of time are not the most tightly controlled, not necessarily the biggest in size, or the wealthiest in natural resources. No, what unites them all is their willingness to believe in the magic of the marketplace.
An old
Oh, black magic has me in its spell.
The magic power of deregulation pushed Ken Lay to found Enron in 1985. Through a merger of vast networks of natural gas pipelines, Lay thought Enron would be poised to take advantage of the government's decision to let gas prices float with the currents of the market.
Ken Lay had a view of deregulation from the standpoint of all the money that he thought could be made.
Ken Lay wasn't alone. A couple of Texas oilmen shared his views on how to get government out of the energy business.
I think they could sort of understand each other. It was, professional courtesy between a sidewinder and a timber rental snipe.
Lay was closer to the father, but while he was governor of Texas, George W. Bush was only too happy to make phone calls for Ken Lay.
This absolutely has no precedent. This is by far and away the most important major relationship of a presidential family with a single corporation in American history.
When Rich Kinder, one of Enron's executives, left the company, Lay arranged for a video Valentine.
Rich, I've been asked to think of one thing I could say to you on your departure from Enron, and it'd be this. Don't leave Texas.
Well, Rich, you have been fantastic to the Bush family. I don't think anybody did more than you did to support George. And of course, at this stage in my life, and Barbara's too, that's what really matters, your family, your friends.
Early on, George Bush Sr. helped secure billions in government subsidies for Enron International. And he helped promote Lay as deregulation's ambassador at large.
Enron is a company that deals with everyone with absolute integrity. We want people to leave a transaction with Enron thinking that they've been dealt with in the highest possible way as far as integrity and truthfulness.
He always wrapped himself in the cloak of moral rectitude. But there was one episode early on that raised questions about whether he was actually walking the walk. This was the Enron oil scandal, also known as the Valhalla scandal.
While you were at Arthur Andersen, were you involved in an investigation at a company called Enron Oil?
Yes, I was.
The issue with the company in 1987 involved the misappropriation of monies by two traders.
In 1987, two oil traders made bets for Enron on whether the price of oil would rise or fall. Oil trading is like gambling. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But Enron Oil always seemed to win, much to Ken Lay's delight.
I tried to explain to Ken Lay the tremendous risk that you have in that market. You can lose 10 times your original investment.
A veteran trader, Mike Muckleroy, was suspicious of Enron Oil's steady, high profits.
Well, this oil trading business had profits that nobody could really understand, and in fact that many of Ken Lay's lieutenants questioned. They said this business can't be making this much money legitimately. Something weird is going on.
Something weird was going on. The first hint came from an anonymous tip about the president of the company, Louis Bourget.
Bourget had taken some $3+ million of corporate funds and put it in a personal account of his.
There were offshore accounts, phony books, and a trail that led from the company's treasurer, Tom Mastroeni, to a mysterious Lebanese speculator no one could find, M. Yass.
What name did you suspect that was?
My ass, and M. Smart. I said, that's Maxwell Smart. I mean, these guys are playing games.
Bourget and Mastroeni were summoned to Houston. First, they presented falsified bank records to Enron. Then they admitted they had diverted company profits to personal accounts.
It was brought to the attention of the Enron board. Auditors were brought in as well to look at the whole thing.
At the board meeting, the auditors told Lay that Bourget and his traders were manipulating earnings, destroying daily trading records, and probably gambling way beyond their limits.
The next day, we found out that Lay's decision was to basically change nothing as far as the operation is concerned. And the reason he gave was that this was the only part of the combined company that was making any money, and that he could not, kill the golden goose.
The traders weren't fired or even disciplined. Instead, Enron sent a telex to Bourget. Please keep making us millions. Instead of reducing Enron's risk, Lay encouraged his traders to gamble more. But then their luck changed.
2 months later, I got this panic call that they had drawn down $90 million in the previous 5 days. What we could do is just try to find out what kind of gorilla we had loose up there.
McElroy hopped on the next plane to New York. He knew Mastroeni had another set of books, and he would do whatever it took to get them.
I basically stood over Tom and I told him one of two things was going to happen. Either one of the trading partners that was crooked with Bourget, who was a German arms dealer, was going to kill him, or I was. I said, I'll track you down and find you no matter where you go. Sooner or later, I'll get you.
The next day, Mastroeni came in with the real books. The traders had gambled away all of Enron's reserves. By acting fast, McElroy bluffed the market and managed to save the company. After Valhalla, Ken Lay maintained that he had been shocked that the traders had gambled so recklessly. But Ken Lay had known all along about the risks that were taken. He had seen the reports warning him about the traders' behavior.
Since the fall of Enron, Ken Lay has said he can't be responsible for things he didn't know about. Sounds like what he said about Valhalla. Do you believe that he didn't know?
I can answer only for one. I can answer for Valhalla because Ken Lay did, in fact, know about this thing because I had told him myself.
The auditors adamantly told Mr. Ken Lay that the 2 rogue traders should be fired. Lay read the report and he read his budget and estimated how much the 2 rogue executives made, and if they were fired, what he could lose. My conclusion was that this guy is a guy who puts earnings before scruples rather than reacting to the dishonesty right in front of him.
Mastroeni received a suspended sentence. Bourget was convicted of fraud and spent 1 year in jail. With his biggest moneymaker now behind bars, Ken Lay had a problem. Who could he find to make money for Enron?
Every year, every day, every week, you have to come up with new ideas.
I'm going straight to the top. Whoa.
Ken Lay saw in Jeff Stilling the guy who had the answer to what the future of the natural gas business was supposed to be. Ken Lay is also a guy who considers himself a visionary, and he liked other people he thought of as visionaries. He liked people with big ideas, and Jeff Skilling was a person with the biggest ideas of all.
Jeff Skilling's biggest single idea was to find a new way to deliver energy. Rather than be bound by the physical flow of the pipeline, Enron would become a kind of stock market for natural gas. It was a magical new idea. Transform energy into financial instruments that could be traded like stocks and bonds.
So that was the one good idea. In 1992, using that good idea, we became the largest buyer and seller of natural gas in North America.
Jeff was like the prophet. He came in and said, there's a whole new world out there. Forget about this pipeline stuff, you know, the stayed pipeline in the ground and gas in and gas out. We can recreate this entire industry.
An attorney from Vinson & Elkins, Amanda Martin was one of the first executives hired by Jeff Skilling and became part of his inner circle.
The excitement was palpable. You cannot imagine how proud we all were to be there. And then, of course, we had a leader who imbued us with a sense of confidence that if we were smart, anything could be accomplished. And then the bottom line, we began to make money. And that in and of itself was a reaffirmation that this could be big.
Skilling saw the opportunity to build an industry new and to start a business from scratch. But he had one specific condition that had to be met before he'd join Enron, and it was that he'd be allowed to use a certain kind of accounting known as mark-to-market. Arthur Andersen signed off and the SEC approved it.
I remember walking in and going, what's going on? And Causey and everybody, I mean, everyone was so excited, and in came the champagne, and we'd got mark-to-market accounting treatment. And I often think about how clear my memory was about that event. And that was the beginning of a major cog in the downfall, ultimately, of Enron.
Mark-to-market accounting allowed Enron to book potential future profits on the very day a deal was signed. No matter how little cash actually came in the door, to the outside world, Enron's profits could be whatever Enron said they were.
Very subjective. And very It left it open to manipulation.
And they were saying that we're going to sell power out of this power plant in 10 years for X dollars per kilowatt. And there was no way anybody could prove that they could do it.
Well,
hey,
good
Rich,
morning.
how are you?
Finally,
Good to
great,
see you.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Good
Morning,
to see you,
Rich.
Todd. Sit down.
We've been working hard on this, and we've really pulled out all the stops. Look what we got. Origination. We did 20 million last year. We think we can do $120 million this year. Trading. We did 10 million last year. We think we can do 64 this year. This is the key. We're going to move from mark-to-market accounting to something I call HFV, hypothetical future value accounting.
Whoa!
If we do that, we can add a gazillion dollars to the bottom line.
Whoa, Jeff. All right, that sounds fantastic. Oh, Jeff, thank you. That's just superb performance. And you're going to go far, my boy. Probably president of the company one day.
You think so?
I think.
He really believed that the idea was everything, and that when you came up with an idea, you should be able to book the profits from that idea right away. Because otherwise, some lesser man was taking the profits from the idea that some greater man had come up
with those objectives.
It was a brutal process. The ability for a 25-year-old to go in and to be reviewed and to be superior, and as a consequence, get a $5 million bonus. I don't think that's repeated in many places in corporate America.
Our culture is a tough culture. It is a very, very aggressive culture.
8 million on new deals.
At Enron, no one was more aggressive than the traders.
You're not going to make 17 million.
If I'm on the way to my boss's office to argue about my compensation, and if I step on somebody's throat on the way, that doubles it, well, I'll stomp on the guy's throat. You know, that's how people work.
Is that your 4.5 million?
On the trading side, we got to be the biggest, baddest house in town. And by necessity, if you wanted to be in the market, you had to deal with Enron.
Try to reconcile your big numbers here.
Enron's traders were like the super powerful high school clique that even the principal doesn't dare to rein in. They had become the major engine of at least reported profits at the company. They took Jeff Skilling and Ken Lay's belief in free markets and turned it into an ideology.
But they pitch it almost as a new economic religion.
Enron Online will change the markets for many, many commodities. It is creating an open, transparent marketplace that replaces the dark, blind system that existed. It is real simple. You turn on your computer, and it's right there. That's our vision. We're trying to change the world.
I think Jeff Skilling had a desperate need to believe that Enron was a success. I think he identified with Enron. He proclaimed at one point, "I am Enron."
The other thing about people at Enron is a lot of them were former nerds, and including Jeff Skilling.
He had been paunchy, he had big glasses, he losing his hair, and Jeff Skilling one day kind of woke up and decided to change himself. And he started working out, lost a lot of weight, but he really did remake himself through sheer will and force of personality.
When Jeff got LASIK on his eyes, everybody at Enron got LASIK, so nobody was wearing glasses.
I think Jeff Skilling is really a tragic figure in a classic sense of the word. He's a guy that people describe as incandescently brilliant, but he's also a guy who is radically different than he at times portrays himself. He's portrayed himself as somebody who has very tightly monitored risk. In reality, he's a gambler. He gambled away huge sums of money before he was 20 years old by making wild bets on the market.
So Jeff Skilling, risk was glamorous. He was a huge risk taker. He actually talked about wanting to go on trips that were so perilous that someone could actually die. This manifests itself in trips that Jeff Skilling led for a small group of friends and customers.
A core cadre of Enron guys used to go on these wild adventures. Andy Fasta would go, Ken Rice would go.
The trips were legend. We can sit and think about what strange insecurity they were trying to overcome, but it made them feel good as men.
And they took a particularly memorable trip to the Baja, 1,200 miles in very rugged terrain in Mexico. This is a trip where people crashed bikes. Ken Rice was on the trip, and he busted a lip and required a bunch of stitches. People broke bones. One guy flipped a Jeep and almost got killed. Those sorts of stories at Enron became legend, and it fed the whole macho culture of the place.
Jeff Skilling had a way of describing people that he liked. He said, I like guys with spikes. He liked somebody with something extreme about them.
Ken Rice was one of the men with spikes, was the salesman of the group. Very amiable, fun, man's man, and was the guy out selling deals to energy companies.
In the case of Cliff Baxter, the company's chief deal maker, he was extraordinarily talented at just doing a deal, but he was a manic depressive.
Baxter was a very bright guy, very blunt, would tell Skilling whatever he thought, was closest to Skilling personally than anyone else at the company.
There was a guy named Lou Pye, who was a key Skilling lieutenant, helped build the trading business in the early years, went on to run Enron's doomed effort called Enron Energy Services.
What was the job of EES as you ran?
It was to sell energy services to end users, industrial end users.
Lou Pye is the guy that Skilling tapped to run the EES business because this was so important to the company and to Skilling's future. He called Lou Pye my ICBM. And Lou Pye dispatched his enemies with incredible skill. And if that meant leaving bodies behind him, Skilling was certainly fine about that.
Not feeling anything.
Lou Pye was kind of a mysterious figure. He's kind of like the invisible.
To trifle with. 2 days later, the guy who told the joke, as Enron legend has it, was dispatched to Calgary, Canada.
Lou Pye lost all interest in running EES as soon as the numbers got high enough.
I netted approximately $100 million. I don't know if that number's accurate, plus or minus 20 million.
And he actually left Enron with more money than anybody, $250 million, because he sold all his stock in Enron after he got a divorce from his wife in order to marry his stripper girlfriend who had had his child.
His exit from Enron was as mysterious as his presence there. Just sort of one day, we all learned that Lou Pye was no longer the CEO of EES.
Lou Pye flew away from Enron with $250 million. The divisions he left behind lost a total of nearly $1 billion. But Enron managed to disguise that fact. Lou Pye became the second largest landowner in Colorado.
It was the number. It was always making those numbers and looking, to me, the real mythology is high school mythology, that, you wanted to be the most popular guy on Wall Street and you were going to do whatever you had to do to stay there. And Jeff understood those rules better than I think anyone else.
Americans are making a lot of money in stocks. The stock market soared to near record highs yesterday. The stock market continued its bull run Thursday. The Dow rose at nearly 61 points.
Even the person with very little disposable income all of a sudden began to play in the stock market because nobody could fail, because stock prices were just going up and up and up.
Another day, another record.
And the internet and technology stocks just going wild.
It gained more than 100 points to close at 7,895.81, the highest finish ever.
It was a time where we had the biggest bull market in the history of the world. Ken Lay was right there acting as a cheerleader.
Obviously, our stock has been doing very well. I think there's a fairly good chance we could see this stock price double again over the next year to 18 months.
Enron mounted a campaign to capture the hearts and minds of stock analysts.
The natural gas stocks include Enron.
We're never satisfied, and I don't want us to ever be satisfied with the stock price. It should always be higher.
Enron posted a 30% jump in second quarter profits as web-based trading boosted its wholesale energy business.
The game was played on Wall Street in such an established way throughout the 1990s. As long as a company met or exceeded the analyst projections for quarterly earnings per share, the stock went higher.
The game was called pump and dump. Top execs would push the stock price up and then cash in their multi-million-dollar options.
People at Enron got paid in large part through stock. Everyone had a huge stake in seeing the stock price go up. And it was driven very clearly by the profits every single quarter. They're exceedingly conscious of that. Skilling was, and everyone else in the company was. They posted the stock price in the elevator.
You were surrounded by the health of the company. What's the stock price doing? We were consumed by it.
This company was fixated on its stock price and fixated on a massive public relations campaign to convince the investment community that they were new, different, innovative, almost heralding a new era of corporate enterprise.
Come work for us. We encourage our people to do new things, try new things, experiment, step out. We begin by attracting the kind of people that are more comfortable in an environment of change.
You know, when you work for Enron, you're going to see the newest thinking. You're going to see the newest markets opening up.
Enron Online, a fabulous, fabulous story. Probably put on.
They were so good at their acting that they convinced corporate America that they were smarter than anyone else.
Alan, with our sincere thanks and admiration, we are pleased and indeed honored to award you the Enron Prize for Distinguished Public Service.
Power business continues to grow at 25%.
They continued to sell the company as being a very stable place where it could predictably increase profits 10 to 15% a year. In fact, to get to those numbers, Enron was doing all sorts of questionable things, taking enormous risks.
We like risk because you make money by taking risk.
Gotta take time to do new things. Can be trapped, gotta move. Do what you wanna do. To tell you not to.
By all accounts, Enron was soaring.
No matter who you are, no matter who you be.
But in reality, profits weren't going up. They were headed in the opposite direction. Enron had vast natural gas operations all over the world. They had cost billions to build, and most were performing terribly.
But in other places in the world, in India, great quarter and great year in India. Phase 1 of Dabhol is in operation, generating power. Phase 2 is financed and is under construction.
My experience indicated there were certain places that you assiduously stayed away from, and one of them, as an example, was India.
They built this power plant in India. Nobody else would do that at the time. They were terrified of investing in India. Enron did it, and did it in a big way.
But Enron had failed to see something basic. India couldn't afford to pay for the power Enron's plant produced. Now, Dabhol is a ruin. Though it lost $1 billion on the project, Enron paid out multi-million-dollar bonuses to executives based on imaginary profits that never arrived. Where was the real money going to come from?
Of course, the pressure was enormous. You had to come up with the next idea that would break through. Failure was not an option.
A flurry of buyouts in the corporate world. The biggest, Enron, announcing a buyout of Portland General.
The merger with PGE put Enron in the electricity business, and Portland General's position on the West Coast gave Enron access to the newly deregulated market of California.
The merger, we think, it uniquely positions us to ultimately become the largest marketer of electricity and natural gas at both the wholesale and retail level nationwide.
What brought all this on was with deregulation. They said that we would not survive unless we joined forces. Enron, I'd never heard of them until they were going to buy us. They slid in here, and when they purchased PGE, all the PGE stock became Enron. Just went through, stamped every one of them. I looked around me, and all the guys that were buying all this Enron, they were doubling their money. And that whole time since then, I put the maximum I could into my 401 and savings.
Portland General, again, good earnings and cash flow.
It's what they call in Wall Street a trust me story. People that have been gas pipeline workers for decades kept all their money in the company because they thought it was as traditional and safe an investment as it had always been, and it wasn't anything close to that.
Should we invest all of our 401k in Enron stock? Absolutely. Don't you guys agree?
Enron is a big winner
today.
One of the things that fascinated me was that almost all of the Wall Street analysts who covered Enron had buy ratings or strong buy ratings on the company's stock.
Why were the analysts blinded to the company's deceit?
We relied on the information that was available at the time.
I trusted the integrity of the company's certified financial statements and the representations of the company's management.
And we've been absolutely upfront with the analysts.
Jeff Skilling was the critical component in creating the Enron illusion. Time and time again, when we had a question to the sell-side analysts that they couldn't answer, the response was, I'll give Jeff a call. I'll run this by Jeff.
By giving Jeff a call, the analysts weren't analyzing at all. They were willing to believe virtually anything Enron told them.
Most
of the analysts right now have a target price on us from $100 to $115 a share.
Any analyst who didn't buy the company line became an enemy of Enron. Enron's CFO, Andy Fastow, had his eye on John Olson, one of the only analysts skeptical of the Enron story.
Enron loved analyst strong buy recommendations.
Merrill was informed by Fastow, either you get somebody who is on board with us and has a strong buy recommendation and loves us at the same time, or we don't do any business with you. I knew that my days were numbered.
This is an abuse.
Merrill Lynch fired John Olson. Soon after, Fastow rewarded the bank with 2 investment banking jobs worth $50 million.
Analysts were routinely getting large bonuses from the investment banking departments to bring in investment banking deals. Once that happens, never was heard a discouraging word.
While Enron's stock kept rising, its businesses kept losing money. Looking at the soaring stocks of the dot-coms, Skilling decided to take Enron into cyberspace.
We're now in the process of seeing if we can create a bandwidth trading market.
Enron is using its knowledge of trading gas to barter other forms of energy, even space on the information superhighway called bandwidth. Ken Rice has worked at Enron for 20 years.
Enron has found a way to stay ahead of the curve.
From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., we're paying for bandwidth that we are not using. Why? Why?
One of our themes around here is to always be asking why. Why something's done a certain way or why it's not done a different way.
There's our market. Why can't we sell the bandwidth to other companies? Make it a commodity, like a pork belly.
Just last week, Enron captivated Wall Street with its bold move into broadband, teaming up with Blockbuster to deliver movies on demand.
It was like being at a religious cult meeting. People started jumping up from their seats with their cell phones and their BlackBerries, running out to the halls to call their bosses.
One analyst summed up his recommendation to investors in one word: wow. Enron's stock soared 34% in 2 days.
And you can tell from the response in the stock market that they like the strategy. It makes sense.
They announced that they had developed the technology. It would be in test markets by the end of the year.
And the technology works. The quality is great, and the customers like it, so we've made a lot of progress.
The truth was that Enron was just struggling with the technology for video on demand.
The technology didn't work, and the deal with Blockbuster soon collapsed. But with the magic of mark-to-market, Enron used future projections to book $53 million in earnings on a deal that didn't make a penny.
By the end of the year 2000, Enron was running out of ways to make the broadband business look successful. They'd tried every trick in the bag to try to create the illusion of a business where there was none, and the people who were working there were getting increasingly desperate.
The executives started selling their stock. By Enron's collapse, Ken Rice had sold $53 million. Ken Lay had sold $300 million. Cliff Baxter, $35 million. Jeff Skilling, $200 million.
As the fraud is perpetuated, all the various lies and artifices begin to convince the ringmaster, if you will, himself, that it's this own bizarre reality. In fact, the fraud is the reality. The perception is the reality. As long as you can keep the perception going on, it really isn't a fraud.
Let's talk about bandwidth trading. What about weather options or futures? How is that market developing?
Yeah, we have a market in weather.
When Enron announced its latest plan to trade weather, people wondered whether it was good science or science fiction.
Do the weather guys get punished here if the weather is wrong? I mean, they're
Do you have any whip marks on your back there, man?
Well, it's unfortunate. That's a good call.
Jeff, as time went on, had a harder time admitting things were wrong. And I have to believe that, you know, when the lights went out at night, he knew what was coming.
I would liken it to the Titanic when you've got a captain who's saying maintain full speed and they bump into a couple of icebergs and then they still keep full speed going. The captain of this ship, Enron, he ignored all the warning signs, and there were plenty of them.
And the captain of the ship was?
Kenneth Lay.
It was one of the bloodiest days in Wall Street history. Shares plummeted 31%.
Tech stocks led Friday's fierce sell-off.
This is really a great wake-up call.
Millions of nervous investors following the huge drop on Friday. The Dow Jones...
Enron was especially a big deal by the end of the year 2000 because by then most internet companies had already begun to fall and everybody on Wall Street was looking for the next big thing. And here you had Enron, which appeared to be this shining star of a new economy company. Its stock price went up 90% in the year 2000 and had gone up over 50% the year before that. It was an it stock on Wall Street, one of those companies that can seemingly do no wrong.
We were the poster child for the new economy. We had this culture that had a lot of focus on reminding us how good we were. And as that culture emerged, then we get to Fortune magazine telling us we were the most innovative corporation in America. Then we really began to feel good about ourselves.
Well, you all did it again. Enron was just recently chosen again for the 6th year in a row in the most admired company survey by Fortune magazine as the most innovative company in America. Well deserved, well deserved.
The sales pitch still sounded good, but one investor saw something in Enron's numbers that the stock analysts had missed.
By and large, the analysts admitted to us in person it's a black box. You have to take it on faith. Who knows where the earnings come from? They just pop out, and all we know is they're always good. And I kept pointing out, well, yeah, isn't that the whole point of if the black box is there to fool you, the numbers are always going to be good until they're not.
I'm not a beat reporter, so I would have had no reason to look at Enron, but Jim Chanos mentioned to me that I should take a closer look at Enron's financial statements, and it wasn't clear from Enron's financial statements that there was fraud here, but what was clear is that something didn't add up.
In March 2001, Bethany McLean, a reporter with Fortune magazine, first raised questions about Enron's financial condition. She asked a simple question in the article that no one could seem to answer. How exactly does Enron make its money? You got very upset, didn't you?
I very specifically remember the telephone conversation that I had with the Fortune reporter. She called up and started asking some very, very specific questions about accounting treatment on things. I am not an accountant, and I could not answer them.
He became really, really agitated. He said that people who raised questions like this were just trying to throw rocks at the company, and that I was not ethical because I hadn't done enough homework. And if I had done enough homework, I would understand how off-base my questions were.
Mr. Skilling, it appears as if you were trying to bully someone who was asking very basic questions about Enron.
I said to her, I have got 6 minutes left before I have to be in a meeting, and I can't get into the details, and I'm not an accountant. And she said, well, that's fine. We're going to do the article anyway. And I said, if you do that, I personally think that's unethical. And the next day, our chief financial officer and our chief accounting officer flew to New York at Enron's expense to sit down, not with the editors, but to sit down with the reporter on that story and help her understand the questions that she was asking.
And the next day, we sat in this small, dark, windowless conference room for about 3 hours going through the various aspects of the company's business. And I'll never forget this. When the interview was over, the other two executives packed up their things and had left the room. And Andy Fastow turned around and looked at my editor and me and said, I don't care what you write about the company, just don't make me look bad.
And Fastow had good reasons for not wanting to look bad.
There were these partnerships that were run by Andy Fastow that were doing business with Enron, and these were disclosed in the company's financial statements, but I didn't mention them in the story I wrote because I thought, well, the accountants and the board of directors have said that this is okay, so I must be crazy to think there's anything wrong with this. The story I ran was actually pretty meek. The title was, "Is Enron Overpriced?" But in the end, I couldn't prove that it was anything more than an overvalued stock, and I was probably too naive to suspect that it was anything more than that.
And was her article critical?
Yes, it was.
Fortune magazine article that's out, the headline is Enron stock overvalued? The gist of the article is that Enron is sort of a black box, which, sorry, it's true. I mean, it's just difficult for us to show people the specifics of how money flows through, particularly the wholesale business. The entire reason that this analysis was done by Fortune magazine is because Business Week had a favorable article about Enron the week before. And there's this competition that the news magazines have, where if one says something good, the other one has to come and find something bad. So I think that was kind of the genesis of it. So the criticism, I think, is kind of ridiculous.
When Bethany McLean at Fortune started analyzing cash flows, and she had this wonderful article saying, take a look at first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and end of year cash flows. There's a reason she didn't invest in Enron, because the financials didn't make sense. But you have to be willing to say that the emperor doesn't have any clothes, and this emperor was pretty powerful.
We are going to unveil this morning a new corporate vision.
Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3. How's this?
It's really hard to know when Enron first crossed the line into outright fraud, but there isn't any doubt about who the guy was who led them there. It was a protege of Jeff Skilling's by the name of Andy Fastow.
Andy Fastow was Enron's chief financial officer. His job was to cover up the fact that Enron was becoming a financial fantasy land.
Enron essentially was losing money on a cash basis year after year, and yet it was reporting profits. So it was defying the laws of financial gravity, and the way it was doing it was with something called structured finance. And the maestro of all that at Enron was Andy Fastow.
Andy was very young. He was hired by Jeff Skilling probably before he was even 30. And he idolized Jeff Skilling, and he certainly wanted to please the boss.
To please the boss, Fastow had to figure out a way to keep the stock price up by hiding the fact that Enron was $30 billion in debt.
People pressured by the need to keep the stock price up begin to cheat a little bit, but then the next quarter comes along and you have to cheat a little more to do the new cheating to make up for the old cheating. And before long, you've created a momentum that now you can't stop.
Fastow created hundreds of special companies to perform a magic trick. Prop up Enron's stock by making its debt disappear. To outside investors, it looked like cash was coming in the door. In fact, Enron was just stashing its debt in Fastow's company. Investors couldn't see it.
It was black magic. It really was. We were pulling some rabbits out of a hat. They could bury debt, they could bury losses.
Many of the companies had exotic names: Jedi, Chuko, Raptors. LJM was Fastow's most ambitious creation. It would work magic for Enron, and it would allow Fastow to conjure $45 million for himself.
Andy, in many ways, was someone we all knew didn't have a strong moral compass. It's almost like Jeff Skilling said, okay, we're hitting some troubled times. Let's set up Andy so we can fill the earnings holes when we need to, knowing that Andy would probably skim a little bit off each transaction for himself. There's a body heat kind of angle to this, you know, where Skilling is Kathleen Turner and Andy is William Hurt. You know, in the end, he got suckered into helping all the executives meet their earnings.
What I wish, in retrospect, I wish we'd never heard of LJM.
Is it your contention that you knew of it and it was appropriate?
Arthur Anderson and our lawyers had taken a very hard look at this structure, and they believed it was appropriate.
But if the theory is that Fastow went rogue somewhere deep in the jungles of Enron and was the sole agent of the apocalypse, I just don't buy it.
Skilling, Lay, and the Enron board had signed off on Fastow's LJM funds. They saw the benefits of letting Fastow do deals with himself.
It is in Enron's best interest because Enron needs the capital, number one.
In a secret videotape that surfaced after the bankruptcy, Fastow can be seen selling LJM to a group of Merrill Lynch bankers. He pitches them on the benefits of investing in a fund that only buys assets from Enron.
Remember, I'm not selling the assets to myself. They own the assets, they're selling them to LJM too.
Fastow knew what kind of deal he was offering was Enron's CFO. He could guarantee profits for LJM.
Yeah, I think this is an extraordinary opportunity.
He has a sort of Cheshire cat grin on his face as he talks about all the ways that the fund is going to profit. And he talks about the informational advantages that he's going to have in his dual role as Enron CFO and as the head of these funds.
Special arrangement. There is never any question that I won't be on both sides of the transaction. I will always be on the LJM side of the transaction.
He was general partner of LJM while at the same time being CFO of Enron. Now, that's a whole nother ball of wax when you want to talk about that conflict of interest, because no human being should be put in a situation where every single transaction they decide whether they're looking after Enron's best interests or their limited partners, because this LJM partnership existed solely to do business with Enron.
You would expect Andy, as chief financial officer of Enron, is heavily banked, so to speak. And as a result, there are 5 or 6 of the name brand banks who have stepped up and said they'll commit to this.
Commit they did, and why not? Fastow was letting them gamble with Enron's chips.
Fastow was using Enron stock as collateral for a lot of these things. They were betting their own company on the transactions.
With the prospect of returns that would exceed 2,000%, 96 individual bankers invested in LJM, and America's major banks put up as much as $25 million each.
It's sort of a who's who of Wall Street. J.P. Morgan Chase, CS First Boston, Citibank, Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank. These are some of the premier investment banks in the world.
It's just amazing how skilled Enron and Andy Fastow were at working Wall Street, playing on Wall Street's greed in order to get money out of them.
To quote Lenin, they were the investment bankers' useful idiots.
As disturbing as Enron's own misconduct is the growing evidence that leading U.S. financial institutions not only took part in Enron's deceptive practices, but at times designed, advanced, and profited from them.
The Enron fraud is the story of synergistic corruption. There are supposed to be checks and balances in the system. The lawyers are supposed to say no. The accountants are supposed to say no. The bankers are supposed to say no, but no one who was supposed to say no said no. They all took their share of the money from the fraud and put it in their pockets.
Enron paid its advisors well. In 2001, the accounting firm Arthur Anderson received $1 million a week. Enron's law firm, Vinson & Elkins, did nearly as well.
Everyone had their hand out at the table. They were all being paid, and as long as Enron continued, they received their fees. They were a part of the process. So it's hard now to say, oh, we didn't know anything.
Had we known then what we know now about Enron's practices, we would not have engaged in these transactions with Enron.
The facts that we now have come to light about Enron, however, were not known at the time.
I believe that the Citigroup professionals involved with these transactions acted in good faith.
I'd like you here to look at one Citi email, Exhibit 333I.
The email trail here is all too lurid. Oh, for instance, one email I remember where the banker writes, Enron loves these deals. They produce cash, but they don't have to show the debt on the balance sheet. Now, a high school student can figure out that the banks were all knowing participants in this wrongdoing.
Merrill Lynch assisted Enron in cooking its books by pretending to purchase an existing Enron asset when it was really engaged in a loan. The accounting sham involved the sale of an interest in 3 Nigerian barges.
Nigeria is a long way from Manhattan, yet for some reason toward the end of the fourth quarter in 1999, Merrill Lynch suddenly decided to buy 3 Nigerian power barges from Enron.
Nigerian power barges have nothing to do with Merrill Lynch's business. It was a blatantly illegal transaction. It was just taking the barges, getting them off Enron's books, having Merrill Lynch, if you will, warehouse them for 5 months, and then buying them back.
Mr. Martin, you testify here today that there was no guarantee, and you said that under oath. Here's a document saying that the head of your whole division here was going to confirm that understanding.
Over the year 2001, Skilling became increasingly despondent. He'd always been a moody guy, but people who knew him said he became just increasingly volatile, showed up for work unshaven, looking blurry-eyed. And I think it was the battle of holding these two totally disjointed thoughts in his mind at the same time. One is Enron, a superstar company, and the other of feeling like it was all crumbling away.
The first cracks in Skilling's public image appeared in a conference call with analysts in April 2001.
And then Jeff Skilling took questions. And about midway through the session, there was a questioner who was sort of aggressively wondering out loud why it was that Enron, as a financial services company, in effect, could not release a balance sheet with its earnings statement like most financial institutions do.
You're the only financial institution that can't produce a balance sheet or a cash flow statement with their earnings.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Asshole.
And then quite audibly, you could hear Skilling say, asshole.
And then he said, asshole.
As I understand, you call him an asshole.
And this just caused unbelievable amounts of consternation all across Wall Street because people thought a Fortune 500 CEO losing it like this, publicly calling an investor an asshole.
If I could go back and redo things, I would not now have used the term that I used.
Mark Palmer, Enron's chief PR guy, even ran a note up to Skilling telling him to apologize, and he just took the piece of paper and tucked it under the pile of papers on his desk. And afterwards, Enron's traders, who had erupted in cheers when Skilling called this guy an asshole, made him a sign. There was a play off Enron's motto, Ask Why, and the sign said, Ask Why, asshole.
My personal feeling was that Jeff looked at the numbers, and he knew that we were in a massive hole. It was the only time, but I saw him truly, truly worried about keeping the stock price up. And he just kept saying to me, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do.
The broadband business was in complete meltdown. And there were all sorts of other problems that Jeff Skilling, as the company's chief operating officer, was wrestling with. In the middle of all of this, Ken Lay walks into Jeff Skilling's office holding up fabric swatches for the new B5 $45 million corporate jet he wanted to buy. And he said to Jeff, asked him a very important question, which of these cabin configurations do you like best, Jeff?
While Ken Lay was stressing over the corporate jet, EES was headed for a crash landing. Facing $500 million in losses, Lou Pye's top lieutenant, Tom White, wondered how EES could show a profit by the end of the quarter.
One of the things that was always a strange occurrence at Enron was for weeks before a quarterly report, we would be under the impression that we weren't going to make our numbers. But then somehow miraculously, we always made the numbers and then some. But then a question was asked to Tom White, how is it that we made the numbers? And his answer was one word, California.
California, here we come.
The first clues to Enron's new strategy hit California with a jolt.
It started at noon, rolling across the state. Sacramento, San Francisco, Beverly Hills, Long Beach, San Diego.
26,000 miles of California power lines, enough to circle the earth. But for the second day in a row, not enough electricity for America's largest state and the world's sixth largest economy.
The first thing we heard about this energy crisis is, well, our lights are going to go off in the middle of winter when we're using half the electricity we normally use during the summer.
The Bay Area got hit by not one, but two rolling blackouts.
We only need 28,000 to 30,000 megawatts in December. We have an installed capacity in California at the time of 45,000 megawatts. Plenty of power to meet our electric demand. Of course, we had blackouts in December.
The people who control California's power grid say once again they're worried about having to black out the northern half of the state.
When the rolling blackouts started in California, there was definitely a lot of excitement in the air. It was something new. It was something that hadn't been encountered before. It was, how is this event going to affect the price of power?
Controlled rotating outages are being implemented. I knew that there was illegality going on. I could feel it, I could smell it, I could sense it, and there was no other explanation because the numbers just didn't add up. We had enough power in California. It was never about lack of supply.
When I ran for governor in 1998, not one human being asked me about electricity. This thing kind of came out of the woods as far as I was concerned, and I was trying in the early days to learn what was happening, how we could fix the problem.
California was selected by Enron as the prime place to experiment with this new concept of deregulated electricity.
Reducing electricity costs is only one benefit from choice and competition.
In 1996, under pressure from energy companies, Governor Pete Wilson and the California legislature passed a bill allowing for the deregulation of electricity.
I wasn't in the legislature in 1996, but I can tell you that there isn't a legislator alive that can tell you with any sophistication how a deregulated electricity market ought to work. Not a one.
California's deregulated system was a bizarre compromise between legislators and free market advocates. The rules were complicated and hard to follow. Inside Enron, California's system was little more than a joke. And once in place, Enron made sure that the joke would be on California.
And I remember the conversation I'd had with Ken. At the end of it, he says, well, Dave, old buddy, let me just tell you, it doesn't matter really to us what kooky rules you Californians put in place. I got a bunch of really smart people down there who figure out how to make money anyhow.
One of the smartest guys at Enron was Tim Belden, who ran the West Coast trading desk.
Tim Belden was a fervent believer in the idea of free markets, and as such, he spent hours poring over the new rules for the deregulation of California's energy industry, looking for loopholes that Enron could exploit to make money.
He found plenty. After the bankruptcy, a confidential memo surfaced revealing the names of Belden's strategies to game the California market. Wheel out, get shorty, fat boy. Recently, audio tapes of the Enron traders were discovered.
What do you want to call this project?
The state. When prices soared, they brought it back in.
So we fucking export.
The rules weren't quite clear.
We have traders here from Enron who are saying they did something wrong, but you don't see anything wrong. I have one last question, and then I am done.
Traders made some money for Enron, but the real money was made by betting that the price of energy would go up. It did, and the West Coast traders made nearly $2 billion for Enron.
Hitting higher than 100 degrees, fueling wildfires and fears that California's strained power grid could
Hey, good afternoon. I hope you find the documentary so far quite interesting. Can you all hear me?
Can.
Okay, good. So good afternoon. Okay, I may want to have a look at your faces just for a short while to note your attendance. If you could put yourself on video just for a short while, seconds, so I can at least say hello to you. Intan, are you there? Just put on the video just for a short while. You cannot put video, is it? You're sharing video. Some of you may not be able to because of your bandwidth, huh? So Intan is there. How many people here today? Let's see, huh? Yeah, 8 people present. I'm trying to take the attendance now. Yeah, I'm just marking your attendance. So Intan is here. Confirm. Okay. Noradila is there. Okay. Say yes. Yeah, hello, how are you? It's good to see. Okay, you can put yourself off. I just want to say hello. Kamaria there?
Ada.
Okay, Kamaria. Ghazali. Mohammed bin Ghazali is there? Yes. Is there? Mohammed bin Ghazali? Muhammad Imam?
Ada.
Oh, Muhammad Imam is
Mr.
there. And okay, hi. Sarah
Hi.
is there? Sarah? Sarah is there? Virunta, I think, is had to attend a funeral today, so not here. Lian Kai is there? Lian Kai? And Go Chu-yi. Go Chu-yi is there? Go Chu-yi? Okay, okay. Okay, so just now the one is, if you saw the documentary, it's about Enron Corporation in the year 2000. There was a big scandal, accounting scandal, auditing scandal, accounting scandal, where they were involved in creative accounting lah. So the auditors, Arthur Anderson, were also involved in trying to book the books, so to say. And the damages arising from that is more than 100 billion US dollars. So compare with our own 1MDB scandal here, I think our 1MDB scandal is about maybe 30 billion US dollars. So the Enron one is still much bigger. And because of the Enron scandal, the laws were changed in the United States, where they passed this law called Sarbanes-Oxley Act, short form called SOX lah, to regulate auditors, independent directors, audit committees, and generally the accounting profession. So Malaysia also follow, usually what US do, Malaysia will follow a few years later. So Malaysia enacted this act called the Capital Market Services Act 2007, which is broadly similar to the what they call that, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of the United States of America. So what you have seen so far on Enron, actually it's not finished, it's about 3/4 way through. So next week you will see the other half to finish it off. So you notice in this case, the top management people are not ethical. And somebody in the WhatsApp group actually highlighted the question, good question is, who choose the auditor? Who choose the auditor? Anybody? If you are the company of if you are a big company like Tenaga or Maybank, these are listed company in Malaysia, or FGV, or CIMB Bank, yeah, or maybe even telecoms. All these are listed companies. Now, who would choose the auditors? A good question. As one student asked lah, siapa yang choose the auditors for your company? If I'm the CEO, what kind of auditors would I choose? If I'm the managing director of the company, what kind of auditors would I choose? If I can choose that. Anybody? Imagine you're the CEO of CIMB. Okay. what kind of auditors would you choose?
Who help us to to hide for our mistake.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah, Muhammad Iman is right. You would choose a friendly auditor, bukan? Why you want to have trouble? You don't want to hire so-called troublemaker, right? So if I have a choice to choose an auditor, the CEO would choose a friendly auditor.
For sure.
Maybe small accounting firm, friendly fella, old kawan, you know.
The new company.
So yeah, and somebody who can be twisted in terms of if I pay a bit of money, you change your mind, yeah. So you saw in Arthur Anderson case, the auditor is a kawan with the board, you know, with the CEO and the chairman. Because they do so much consulting for the firm, they cannot be independent anymore. Yeah. So the fees they get from consulting is 80% more than the auditing fees. So you won't expect the auditor to be bebas anymore lah. Huh? So that's why to answer the student's question, who choose the auditor is normally selected by the audit committee, jawatan kuasa audit of the board, not the CEO. Okay, so in the board of directors of a listed company in Malaysia or in America Syarikat, there is a special committee being formed consisting of pengarah bebas. So the pengarah bebas, independent directors, would evaluate the appointment of auditor. They will nominate a name. So once the name is nominated at the coming Mesyuarat Agong, at the coming AGM, the shareholders would vote whether to approve or not to approve. I think this system will ensure that the auditor is nominated, not nominated by the CEO, nominated by the Jawatan Kuasa Audit Committee, consisting of pengarah bebas, and then they don't approve. They will put it to the next coming AGM, Mesyuarat Agong. Saham holders, the shareholders, would then vote. They need 50% plus one share to approve. So once the auditors approve, he cannot be removed by the directors and by management. It will be from AGM. The AGM will be valid for appointment of the auditor until the next AGM. Okay. So the only way the auditor can be removed is by shareholder again. Shareholder must have a special meeting to vote whether to sack the auditor or to not sack the auditor if the issue arises whether they want to remove the auditors. So auditors cannot be removed once they are properly appointed by the shareholders. Right. So to answer the question of the student who asked this question is, okay, no, audit committee will assess, they will nominate the name, then the name will be put to the shareholder to vote. Okay. So of course the shareholders are entitled to ask questions at the meeting whether this auditor is qualified or not. So the audit committee should have already assessed the auditor whether they're qualified. I mean, if it's a big firm like Tenaga, you don't expect them to have a small firm, right? You would expect a reputable, relatively big company auditing firm to audit lah. Normally the big four lah. So the big four auditor got branding, right? So they are normally Ernst & Young, Deloitte, KPMG, Pricewaterhouse. Now, during the time of Enron, there were big five auditors, which includes Arthur Anderson. But because Arthur Anderson is involved in the scandal, they are actually one of the guilty parties in that creative accounting issue, because they actually helped to cover up the scandal. So they lost the license and some of the partners actually went to jail. So the big five auditing firm become big four lah, only lah. So I think another student also asked, then who will audit the auditors? Is there anybody audit the policeman or not? Who is the policeman of the policemen? So in Malaysia and also in US, because of the Enron scandal, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and Capital Market Services Act in Malaysia, they actually set up a oversight body called the Audit Oversight Board, short form AOB. This one is the auditor of the auditor. All right. So this auditor called the AOB in the America is called the Public Oversight Body, PCOB. They will audit the auditors. They will go through the audit paper and see whether they've done a good job. If they are found to be negligent, then they could be fined or they could be charged in court, and they could also lose their audit license. Then I also asked another question, which I posted in the WhatsApp group, is are the other auditing firm clean or not? Is EY clean? Are they honest? Are they proven to be per se like a white paper? Yeah. What about KPMG? What about Price Waterhouse? Yeah. There are big four companies. So are these companies, this auditing firm, are they clean or not? Anybody? Are they bersih? Bersih amanah? Anybody? Are these big four companies, big four auditing firm, are they clean? You know the big four auditing firm that come and kacau you also lah, if your company is audited by them, yeah. So Ernst & Young, you got Price Waterhouse, you got Deloitte. What's the other one? I can't remember. They're big four. Anybody? Are they clean or not? This big four company. I mean, Arthur Andersen already lost the license, so they're no longer around. But the question I ask is, the remaining four, are they clean or not? So the big four is EY, Deloitte, KPMG, and Price Waterhouse. Ini syarikat, this auditing firm got scandal on other scandals. Anybody remember seeing any scandal about this big four, or they're very clean? You don't expect any scandal from these big firms. Nobody. Any guesses? Nobody want to guess. Can you hear me? Audio? Can. Testing?
I think KPMG.
KPMG got scandal, is it?
Yep.
Yeah, KPMG got
maybe.
scandal. Yeah, you're right. They got involved in 1MDB. You remember our own Malaysian scandal?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, they signed the accounts true and fair, Bernard and Saksangan. All right. Actually, of the big four, all involved in 1MDB. Deloitte was also involved. They signed the accounts. I think KPMG resigned. Then they come in and they signed the accounts. Also 1MDB accounts. EY also involved. So the only firm that was not involved was Price Waterhouse. So Price Waterhouse was later asked to come in to do a forensic audit on 1MDB. Okay, so none but Price Waterhouse also not cleaner, because overseas they also involved in a few other scandals. In fact, all the accounting firm, the big four overseas, they kena teruk, right? And the fines denda. So in Malaysia, I think each of them will fine, some of them will fine a few $100 million by the Kerajaan because of their involvement in signing off the accounts to be true and fair. Now, let me twist the question in another way. You are the chief partner of KPMG, all right? And imagine the Prime Minister of Malaysia give you a phone call and ask you to come to his house, right? So KPMG, you're the partner, you go to his house, and then the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Mr. Dato Najib, asks you, please sign the accounts certify the accounts as true and fair. Would you sign? Would you sign? The Prime Minister call you to go to his house, all right? And then in front of the Prime Minister point his finger at you and ask you, please sign the accounts off as true and fair. Would you sign? Okay, can you all put in your chat Y for yes, N for no? Can type in your answer. The Prime Minister of Malaysia asks you to go to his house, sit in front of him, and he points his finger at you and asks you to sign off the accounts of 1MDB as true and fair. Bernard as example. It means you sign the certificate of fitness lah. How many of you say yes, put Y? And how many of you say no, put no? Why and no? Put in a check. I will do a poll. Have you done in your answer yet? Send in the answer. No answer. Quick, type in the answer. This will count towards your assessment. The Prime Minister of Malaysia asks you to go to his house, right? Point a finger at you and ask you to sign. You're the partner of KPMG. Ask you to sign the accounts off as true and fair. How many of you would sign? Put yes. And how many of you will say no? And why for yes and for no? Now this one is group participation. You need to respond. Doesn't matter if you're wrong or not. Put yes or no into your chat. No answer so far. Still waiting for the answer. If you can't access the yes no function, can you type in your answer to the WhatsApp group? Your name, yes or no. Nobody dare to type? It's very simple. Y for yes and for no. Still waiting for answer. Can you access the chat function? You can put it under the chat function, yes or no. Still have no response. Come on. If you can't access the chat function, can you send your reply to the WhatsApp group? So nobody did answer. Come on. There's no right or wrong answer. Just want to see your response. Okay, 2% response. Now, what about the rest? What about the rest? You must be brave, you know. Only 2% respond so far. Come on. Be brave. You know, it won't be held against you. So only 2% will get bonus points for participation today. The rest didn't respond. Intan responded. Nora Dillard responded. The rest still not responding. Okay, give you another minute. Okay. Hamzat, very brave. Say no. Okay, that's good. You got guts. What about the others? Just type Y or N. No. Do it through the WhatsApp group or do it through the chat. Yeah, response from 3. The others? Remember, there's no right or wrong answer, but I'm just trying to put yourself in the shoes of the partner of KPMG or Deloitte, or EY, At that particular time, yeah, would you sign or not sign? Okay, she was saying, yes, you will sign. Good. Anybody else? 4 response. Agonizing over the answer. Okay, 20 seconds left. Okay, time's up. Now, to discuss this question, whether you, as a partner of an auditing firm, whether you sign or not sign, it's very difficult question to ask. If the Prime Minister asks to see you in his house and point a finger at you, and then also there are special branches officers around, you would think a lot of people would tend to sign off. So if you say yes, you cannot be blamed also for signing off because you are worried about your own safety also, right? So Kamsat say no, he won't sign. There were cases where the auditor, did not sign, and then they get into trouble also because the government in trouble, in power, can do a lot of things to you. So in the case of KPMG and Deloitte and all these fellas, I think they sign off because they thought they can get more business from the government if they sign off. But unfortunately, the Prime Minister did not stay in power, ex-Prime Minister. So when new government came in, the trouble starts for them because the new government will start to look into such things. So all these fellas who signed got into trouble, and they were fined quite a lot of money for the involvement in 1MDB. I think in one case, the partner was actually lost his license because of this issue. If you read the newspaper about the police, one of the police in Australia that was charged with murdering somebody on the instruction of his superior, right? So of course the superior all deny knowledge now. So this guy is now left on his own in Australia, cannot come back to Malaysia, and the superior here denied any knowledge. But he said that he was instructed to do so by superior, and if the superior asks you to do, I guess he said he had to follow instructions. So the question I ask you as you as a student, what if your boss asks you to do something illegal? You're in trouble also, isn't it? Because if the boss asks you to change the accounts, to manipulate the figures, if you say yes, you may be implicated. So that's why we are studying this course called auditing, that tells you what are the safe things to do and what are the dangerous things to do if your boss asks you to do certain things. Because nowadays there are a lot of laws such as creative accounting, false accounting. Yeah. Oh, Sarah, your line is bad because the internet connection is bad, is it? Yeah. Okay. Maybe you can see the recording afterwards, maybe clearer afterwards. So it's a difficult task, but you have to be worried that when the thing bursts, get into trouble, you are the one that will get into trouble. Okay. So the Enron documentary shows you that when things go wrong, the bosses are going to blame you lah. The chairman all cannot remember those things that they allegedly asked you to do, and probably you be end up carrying the bomb lah. Okay, now we will look at your lecture notes. I posted it in the WhatsApp group. If you access, there's a Bahasa version and there's also the English version. I would share my English version lah. Those who you can refer to your BM version if you want to. Okay, I will now post it. Hey, can you all see the lecture notes? Can you all see the lecture notes?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, just now the video was about chapter 2. Okay, chapter 2. Your assignments and everything will be there'll be a case study on Enron, so you have to know that case quite well. This case is very important because it is a cornerstone of changes in corporate governance, conduct corporate, and also the auditing profession, and also talking about the accounting profession, how how they need to be honest, and how the punishment will be very, very big if you do creative accounting. So all this is because of the Enron scandal in the year 2000. And because of that scandal that affected a lot of people and, resulting in big losses for pension fund employees and investors, more than 100 billion US dollars were lost. Yeah. So because of that scandal, new laws came about. And that's why now you're studying auditing and you find that there's so many acts to look at. Companies Act, 2016, Companies Act, and we are looking at the Capital Market Services Act 2007. Now, all these acts and regulations came about as a result of the fallout from the Enron scandal, and also to a lesser extent by scandals called WorldCom, Tyco. Now, all these are very big companies that had accounting scandals, and they share one common trait is that the auditor involved is also Arthur Andersen. So next week, we will continue with that video to finish off the other half of the Enron, and also the second half of the video is about a WorldCom, about accounting profession, auditing profession, and other scandals involving other listed companies. Okay, next week. So okay, let's look at chapter 1. Can look at chapter 1. Okay, what is auditing? Now, auditing is a critical examination of financial statements by an accountant who is a licensed auditor. The word license is very important because not every accountant can be auditor. Once you qualify as an accountant to be registered under the MIA, the Malaysian Institute of Accountants, this person need to also work for a public accounting firm for 2 years and then apply to get a license with the Ministry of Finance. So this person need to be interviewed by the panel before he be granted a license for every 2 years. If this person to become an auditor of a listed company, he will need to get an additional license from the AOB, the auditor of the auditor. Okay, so it's not easy to be an auditor, and the liability involved is actually quite heavy. Now, what's the objective of auditing? Now, if something is not audited, can you trust the accounts or not? Suppose you go and your friend asks you to invest in a company, right? And then the guy give you a set of management account. Can you trust the management accounts or not? Can you trust the management accounts? Anybody? You want to invest in a company, or there's a investment scheme, you know, your friend asks you to invest in a scheme. Okay, so they give you a set of management accounts. What is the question you should ask your friend is this accounts audited or not? Now, if it's audited, it should be signed off by auditor, right? And the license number should be stated at the bottom when you sign. Okay. Now, not all auditors are equal. I must stress, not all auditors are equal. Because you have big auditing firm, you also got very small auditing firms. Now, do you trust a bigger auditing firm or you trust a smaller auditing firm? What's the answer? Do you trust, as an investor, do you trust a bigger auditing firm or you trust a small auditing firm, smaller auditing firm? Anybody? Now, resources, talking about resources. A big auditing firm would have more resources, more junior auditors, so they are more likely to do a more credible job. So if you sign off by one of the bigger auditing firms, I tend to trust it more than if it's signed by a smaller firm. Now, with a small firm, you got only 2 staff. You know, the chances are that he's not doing that well, and he's probably more willing to take some kind of kickback, you know, or bribery to to sign off their accounts. It's more likely that the client will give him some money and then auditor will sign. Yeah, small auditing firm will sign. But bigger auditing firm, because more is at risk for him, he's less likely to sign off, you know, without doing proper job. He's not likely to sign off because he got more to lose. So as a rule of thumb, you would rather trust a bigger firm than a smaller firm. In fact, one of the things that you do is if your friend asks you to invest in a company and give you a set of accounts and he tells you it is audited, at the bottom there, it should be signed off by the auditor. And then you will find his name and his license number. And likely you will find his address as well. But if his address is not there, you can do a search on the MIA or on the Securities Commission website, or do a Google search. You should be able to find his address. So what you should do is go and visit the auditing firm. If the audit firm is very, very small, maybe just having a room or something like that with broken windows, you don't see any staff or maybe just one staff, then you have to be careful because you may not be able to trust the audit work done. Yeah. In the scandal, for example, in the Bernie Madoff scandal, the Bernie Madoff's firm does more than 50 billion business a year, US dollars, but the auditing firm is just one person, an old man. So actually, if we do a search of the auditing of the auditor, you will not trust the accounts that he signed off because it's too small relative to the business that is being conducted. It's unlikely that he's got the resources to do a proper audit job. So be very careful. Auditing, if the accounts are audited, ask whether it's audited, see evidence as audited, and if it's possible, go and visit the auditors. Go and have a look. Now, what is the objective of auditing? Is necessary for objective verification. It is a third-party verification by an independent, experienced, and qualified. Sometimes he may be experienced, he may be qualified, but not independent, right? He may be a friend of the director. He may have borrowed money from the company. Yeah, he may have some dealings with the company in his personal capacity. So if he got all these connections with the CEO or the director of the company or with the company, you cannot trust the audit. Okay, So for the audit to be trustworthy, it must be an objective verification. Okay, the auditor must be independent, truly independent. He must be experienced in the company's business. In fact, the auditor should be very familiar with the business model of the company that he's auditing. Because if you don't understand the business model of the company that you're auditing, then you're wasting your time auditing because you'll be just ticking the boxes. Yeah, the audit will not be very effective. And of course, the person must be qualified auditor, licensed. It's just like a doctor, or a surgeon. Would you trust a surgeon who's not qualified? Of course, you wouldn't, isn't it? You would want to see and check whether he's qualified before you risk your life with the doctor. Similar with a bus, even the bus driver. You will ask, is this bus driver qualified? Has he got what do you call that, up-to-date and current driver's license or not? Yeah. Or your Grab driver, whether it's licensed or not. If it's not licensed, you're risking your life. So for auditing is, you want to verify whether this auditor is licensed or not. You can check his license number with the Securities Commission or the MIA. Yeah, just Google, you should find his license number appearing. So one of the key things about auditing is that you must be a qualified auditor. You should be experienced in the kind of business that's doing. So auditor who's very experienced in banking, if you ask him to do manufacturing, you're not able to do a good job because he's not experienced. It's just like a specialist, a doctor, orthopedic versus a heart surgeon. If you ask a heart surgeon to do orthopedic work, he may not be able to do a good job. Or you ask an orthopedic surgeon to do heart surgery, he may not be able to do a good job also. So the auditor must be experienced in the kind of work that is being asked to audit. Yeah. So the purpose of an audit is to provide an independent view, of the financial statements, and this is required by Akta Syarikat 2016, Companies Act 2016. I have posted the copy of the Companies Act on your WhatsApp group, just to confirm. Do you all receive it? Did you all receive it? I posted.
Yes.
Did you? Okay, so you can open the PDF file. There's a Bahasa version and there's an English version. Okay, Akta Syarikat, there will be an assignment on this. We will discuss about your assignment next week lah. We'll do it in class if possible. We are be looking at the Akta Syarikat. We are looking at the auditing section of it and also at the financial statements part of it. Yeah. So there'll be a assignment next week which we'll discuss. I've also posted the assignments consisting of 3 parts. We'll be doing the quiz. The quiz, actually, we are going to do it in class. It's an open book kind of thing. We'll do it together. Then there's a tugasan assignment, and then there is a presentation, a video presentation by yourself. You can do it at home or do it on class, and then you post your presentation to me. Yeah. So next week we will be looking at the quiz, and we'll do it together in class. Any questions so far? Any questions so far? So today we actually going to cover chapter 1 of your lecture note. At chapter 2, we have seen the video, so we have not finished. Next week we will continue with the other half. Any question on the video, Enron, so far? So far, only 2 questions people ask is, student ask is, number 1, who choose the auditor? And number 2 is, who audit the auditor? I've answered the question, right? So auditor are actually nominated by the audit committee, but approved by the shareholders. Okay, number 2, who audit the auditors? It is the Audit Oversight Board, AOB. They are the policemen. They are the policemen of the policemen. Yeah. They are policemen of the policemen. They are the one who go and check the auditors to make sure that they are doing a good job in auditing their clients. Now, who paid the auditors? Another question I want to ask. Siapa bayar juru audit? Who paid auditors? Anybody want to guess? siapa bayar yuran? Who pay the auditor's fees? Who paid the auditor's fees? Any guess?
Company.
Company.
Yeah, company. So let me ask you, would you bite the hand that feed you or not? This is another issue been discussed by some people is because the fees is paid by the company. The company engages you to check them. Okay. Now if
So
the
bagi
audit
lebih sikit.
tak ada independence ke? Ada independence or not?
No, independence, because they didn't know the company bought.
Yeah. So there's some suggestion that the audit fee should be paid by the kerajaan. Kerajaan pay, all right? Then they can come in. Then of course when they come in, they are not they don't fear the management anymore, right? They don't fear the director because they know that the fees will be paid by the kerajaan. There's a proposal but it's not been implemented Of course, kerajaan doesn't want to get involved by paying the fees also because it involves extra expenditure. So the practice of the fees being paid by the company will still be carried out. I can see for the immediate future, but the safeguard for the auditor will be the audit committee. The audit committee is the one that will assess the fees, yeah, and of course the shareholders are the ones that will approve the fees being paid Okay, so if the auditor do a good job, I think the shareholder would approve the fees But it is quite rightly pointed out that because the fees are being paid by the syarikat, the auditor may be a bit scared to come up with something too negative to a report, because they're afraid that the fees may be gantung. The fees may be gantung. Yeah. So it's always at the back of the mind but to overcome this problem, the MIA, Malaysian Institute of Accountant, they come up with this ethics requirement that if the fees are not paid to the auditor in the next year, the auditor cannot start work on the audit for next year. You think that is a good move? For purpose of ethics, they say that for purpose of ethics, the company must clear the audit fees for last year's audit. Otherwise, the auditor cannot start work on a new audit. Ethics. Why they have this ethics? Very simple. Because if the auditor is still not paid with last year's audit fee, the Juro audit may not be independent, because he worried that the fees last year won't be paid. Unless, so the MIA or the Malaysian Institute of Accountant also realized that it's an ethical issue. So they come up with a requirement that's circulated to all members that if the client tidak bayar yuran bagi you for the year, for the last year yuran, tak bayar, you tak boleh buat audit for the same client for the new year. Yeah, because your mind is more worried about your fees than your audit work. Now, because of this, most of the client would pay the fees, right? Would pay the fees because they know that if they don't pay the fees, the new year audit will be delayed. Now, what happens if the audit is delayed? If your audit for the new year is delayed, and if you are a listed company, then you may become a PN17 company. What is PN17 company? If you are a listed company, that means your syarikat will be designated as a sick, S-I-C-K, sakit company, penyakit. That means you'll be suspended from the Bursa Malaysia unless you correct the situation, right? Unless you correct the situation. So I think this is a very good, what do you call that? Macam like compromise Compromise. We know that company pay your fees is not independent, but there's a requirement for ethics that if you don't pay my last year fees, I cannot start work with you for the new year. Okay. Now, if I start work with you this year and you don't pay me some more, that means I get more worried about my fees, then I become less independent. So this is one good solution to what do you call that? To promote kebebasan, right? Independent of the Juro audit. Now, for the purpose of the audit to provide independent view of a certain matter, such as financial statement, there are cases where there are other types of audit. Now, a lot of you often think that there's only one kind of auditor, which is the external auditor that come and kacau you once a year. But actually, there are many other type of auditors also, you know. So this type of auditors that kacau you once a year, they are called external independent auditor, and they are a requirement for all companies under Akta Syarikat 2016. All right, they are required by the Companies Act. Now, apart from auditing companies, you often ask the question, siapa audit kerajaan, audit government, or government never don't need to be audited. Who audit the government? Anybody? Companies are audited by external auditor under Akta Syarikat. These are licensed external auditors. Yeah. Now, 1MDB is a syarikat. That's why they are required to be audited by the external auditor, KPMG, and all these fellas. And that's why the auditors got into trouble because they signed the accounts as benar dan saksama, true and fair, when in fact it wasn't. So all of them kena quite teruk. The fine is a few hundred million, which they have to pay out of their own pocket. They had an out-of-court settlement. That means the kerajaan agree not to pursue the matter in court if they pay the denda, the fine, like kompang like that lah, which they did lah. But now asking a question is, who audit the kerajaan? Kerajaan, like who audit the police? Who audit the custom office? Who audit the Ministry of Finance? Who audit the what do you call that? Ministry of Education? Yeah. Who audit the customs? Yeah. Anybody? Any auditors, or they don't require to be audited? Or this one is what do you call it? Free gift, no audit. Kerajaan can do what they want to do. Anybody want to guess? Syarikat is required to be audited under Akta Syarikat 2016 by law. No choice lah. Licensed auditor. So the question I'm asking you is, siapa yang audit kerajaan, the government, or who audit the
government agency?
Government agency. That means own self do audit lah. That means custom office do own self. Or police do their own audit lah. If police do audit, always got no further action, right? If you do your own audit, you think you want to find out scandal. Of course, you cover up, right? You're the Ministry of Education, you audit yourself. Is it likely that you'll find something bad to report? No. If I ask you to audit yourself, would you audit yourself badly or good? Will you say good or bad?
Good.
Jabatan Audit Negara yang akan audit.
So to audit the kerajaan under the Audit Act, there is a Auditor General. Okay, so the Auditor General is nominated by the Prime Minister but approved by the Agong. Approved by the Agong. So once the Auditor General is appointed by the Agong, he cannot be removed unless it's a scandal or he's got some what do you call that, misbehavior problem and so on. He does not report to the Prime Minister or the Cabinet. The Auditor General report to the Parliament. He report to the Agong, right? He report to the Parliament directly. Actually, he is approved by the Agong, but he report directly to the Parliament. Even for state matter, he report to the state Parliament. So, for example, like recently, they audited the Ministry of Education. They find that many things not been done properly, and this is tabled to the Parliament at the end of each year. A copy is given to the Cabinet, a copy to report, but it's not for the Cabinet or the Prime Minister to approve. It's for them to get ready to be tembak by the Parliament. Okay, so this ACTA, that requirement of the government to be audited by the Auditor General, is called Audit Act. Audit Act, ACTA audit. Okay, so for company is by Akta Syarikat 2016. Okay, these are the various law that require the audit of syarikat. For kerajaan is required by the Audit Act, ACTA audit. Okay, and the ACTA audit require the appointment of Auditor General, okay, approved by the Agong, and to report to the Parliament. In fact, this Auditor General doing so good job recently, because I find out so many scandals in the kerajaan, government departments, and so on, that the Parliament decided that, you know, that the power of the Auditor General should be extended, that he can actually take action or be involved in action taken against wrongdoers. Because very often in the past, the Auditor General discovers something, report to Parliament, but nothing is done. Nothing is done. Every year report the same thing, the same problem. So now they want to make it accountable. They set up a committee in Parliament. The Auditor General will be part of the committee, and they will take action to make sure that audit findings have been followed up and the situation rectified as far as possible. The wrongdoers to be punished as well. Yeah. So, for example, the custom office, tax office, all the kerajaan, what is the department. For government-linked companies, because they are syarikat, for example, like Tenaga, although the government has a controlling share in it, but because it is a public listed company, it will not be audited by the Auditor General, but it is audited by the what do you call it, licensed auditors under Akta Syarikat 2016. So remember, we are looking at two acts now. One act is Akta Syarikat, the other act is Audit Act. Audit Act is by the appointment of the Auditor General to go and audit the government departments. Now, don't get confused. Don't get confused. The Auditor General with Attorney General. What's the difference? What's the difference between Auditor General and Attorney General? Anybody? People always get confused with the two. Now, Auditor General is involved in the audit of government department. Attorney General is involved in being a lawyer or legal advisor to the government. Right? So the Auditor General is not involved in the audit, but the Auditor General is involved in the audit of government departments. The attorney, sorry, let me rephrase that. The difference between Auditor General and Attorney General. So Auditor General is involved in the audit of government departments. The Attorney General is actually the lawyer or legal advisor to the government. All right. So the Attorney General is involved in the law side of things, legal matter. Now the Attorney General is very powerful also, because before the government or prosecutor can prosecute somebody in court, the courts must what prosecutor must get clearance from the Attorney General. If the prosecutor want to prosecute somebody in court, but the Attorney General say no, the case cannot proceed, you know. So there were a few cases where the auditors found something, and the matter was highlighted to the prosecutor, the Securities Commission. The prosecutor said, let's prosecute. The papers were prepared, submitted to the Attorney General, but the Attorney General said cannot. Then the case cannot proceed. All right. Now, who does the Attorney General report to? The Attorney General actually report to the Prime Minister. You know? So if the prosecutor or the police or the Bank Negara finds something about the Prime Minister and want to prosecute the Prime Minister, and they want to file the papers to start to charge the Prime Minister, it has to be cleared by the Attorney General. So if these papers go to the Attorney General, of course the Attorney General will consult the Prime Minister, because the boss of the Attorney General is the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister say, no, don't proceed, because the case is against me, man. So the case cannot proceed. So in the case of 1MDB issue, was the prosecutors and the Securities Commission and Bank Negara and also the Bukit Aman, the Federal Police, actually discovered that the ex-Prime Minister has allegedly some involvement with 1MDB. So they actually prepared papers, prosecution papers, to commence prosecution of the ex-Prime Minister at that time. So papers were submitted to the Attorney General. I think the Attorney General at the time was another gentleman, another person. He was going to sign off the papers to proceed, but then the Prime Minister suddenly retired, inverted commas, retired him, and told the current Attorney General that, you are now been retired. Your last day is like today, So before the Attorney General can file and sign off the papers, he was, inverted commas, retired, and then a new Attorney General was appointed. So the new Attorney General obviously was a related party to that ex-Prime Minister. So when he was appointed and he reviewed the prosecution paper, he told the parties concerned that there's no case, please close the file. So that was the end of the matter. So there is some problem with the kebebasan of the Attorney General. The Auditor General is okay because the reporting line is fine. He's approved by Agong. He reports to Parliament, so there's no cover up lah. But in the case of the Attorney General, the reporting structure, something is not right, because in the final chart is the Attorney General reports to the Prime Minister. So anything involved with the Prime Minister will not proceed because of the structure. So in the current government, there's now a proposal to separate the function, and the appointment of the Attorney General should not be by Prime Minister but by the Parliament. All right. And also they suggested that the power of the Attorney General is too big. So the power to determine whether prosecution should happen or not should be taken away and given to another body like the Securities Commission, to the prosecutor, or to have a prosecution department independent of the Attorney General department. And this prosecution body will not report to the Prime Minister, but report directly to Parliament. So all these proposals are in the pipeline to improve the Pendabran corporate, to improve corporate governance of the country. Yeah. Any questions so far? Any questions?
Mr. Ken,
Yes.
kalau kita choose for the auditor,
Yes.
kan, is that we have to stick with the one auditor for the year atau?
Okay, good point there. Now, once you appointed one auditor, not appointed, I presume that you are the director or shareholder. You're director. Assuming that you're a director, you nominated this auditor, and you are the independent director, I presume, part of the audit committee. So you nominated this auditor. After you assess them, you say, okay, this auditor is qualified, they are independent, they boleh buat kerja lah. So you nominate this name. So at the Mesyuarat Agong, the shareholders will assess the evaluation. So assuming that the auditor, the shareholder approve, so the vote, they do the voting, 50% plus one share of the shareholder approve the approval. So bila dia approve, the appointment of the auditor will be from that AGM, will be valid until the next AGM for 1 year. Yeah, yeah. But maybe halfway during the audit, the managing director not happy with them, because they find out too many things. So I assume you're the managing director, you're not happy, find out too many things, no good, cause a lot of trouble. So can you tell the auditor, I want to sack you, or you resign, I don't want you, can or not? Under measure, cannot. The only person, you cannot remove him. The only way this juru audit boleh remove is by way of a shareholder meeting. Okay, so if you're the director and you're not happy with the auditor, one of the ways you can do it is you go and contact the shareholder who hold together 10% of the shares of the syarikat. Maybe you ask the shareholder, hey, go and requisite a meeting, EGM, extraordinary general meeting. The agenda of the meeting is to remove the auditor. So if the shareholder agree, they would contact the company secretary and write a letter and say that we request the company secretary to convene a general meeting, special AGM. The agenda is to remove the auditor. Okay, so the company secretary will then respond and then will shoot out a notice we've got to give 21 days notice 21 hari to all the shareholder that a meeting is now convened. Agenda is to remove the auditor. Okay, or maybe also to appoint a new auditor, also possible, together in the same meeting, also possible. But let's say there's only one agenda, remove the auditor. Okay, now once this is stable, the existing auditor have a right to circulate a reply to all the shareholder and also to speak to the meeting. So he may say that I discover fraud involving the director, managing director. He may say that. So at the meeting, it may not be easy to remove him if he got a good ground to say that he found something. All right, or he may say that actually I'm asking for too much information. Then he may be removed also, possible, yeah. Or another possibility is the auditor resign. Sometimes the auditor say too much problem, I resign. Then if he resign, then you don't need the meeting because he see the meeting coming, maybe very embarrassing. You got to face hostile shareholder, you got to face the hostile board member. So maybe not worth the time also lah. So to answer your question is, once appointed, the auditor generally will stay for 1 year until the next AGM. However, a special meeting can be requisited by the shareholder to remove the shareholder, to remove the auditor. But the auditor is entitled to speak and show his side of the story. Yeah, he's entitled to speak. And sometimes he may have got a good story to tell. So you may be scared also if the shareholder talk about all these things at the meeting, the director may also get into trouble. Yeah. So sometimes it's better to keep quiet and just try to cooperate with the auditor and make sure that everything is sort of answered in a civilized manner. Everything is not so contentious lah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. To answer your question, yeah.
Thank you, second.
Okay. Financial statements, they're not audited, a lot of trouble, sometimes wrong calculation, asset sold but not recorded, asset overstated, expenses not recorded or recorded in the wrong accounting period, inconsistent accounting policy. Sometimes they use straight line depreciation, sometimes they use reducing balance. And one very important thing is that not following approved accounting standards. Now, if you don't follow approved accounting standard, your account will be qualified. What are approved accounting standards? You cannot do freestyle account in Malaysia or even in US or in UK or in any Commonwealth country, because all the disclosure item and method for accounting are governed by approved accounting standards under Financial Reporting Act. That means if you do accounts payable, they actually is a accounting standard to govern how you record accounts payable. Now, for example, sales or accounts receivable, AR, sales. For sales, there's an accounting standard that will actually govern how you record sales. Now, why is sales so important? Because many fictitious accounting involve recording inflated sales. Sales are not in existence. Why you want to record inflated sales? Because if your sales go up and your expenses don't go up, you're going to make more profit. Now, why does a CEO want to report better profit? Because better profit means better bonus, right? And then you get maybe better increment. And then if your company is listed, better sales with less expenses means better profit. Better profit announced to stock exchange, to Bursa, that means the share price go up. Share price go up, the board of directors also happy, shareholder also happy, everybody happy. Then CEO get better bonus. And better still, if the CEO get ESOS, employee share scheme, that means they get almost like free shares. And if the share price go up, he can exercise the ESOS at a lower price. Usually the ESOS exercise price is lower, and then he can sell the shares and make a big profit. Sometimes they make much more profit from selling the ESOS shares due to the share price going up than from the salary. Yeah, but this is a very common manipulation. In the Enron, right? Just now we saw the video. The chairman, the CEO, the senior management, they inflated the profit by creating fictitious sales. Yeah, so profit go up, share price go up. So Enron shares went up from $1 go up to over 80 dollars. Yeah, okay. So can you imagine how much profit this management make if they get their ESOS at $1 and they exercise it at later on at $1, sell it even at $40, then make 40 times, yeah, of the profit. Yeah, so there's a lot of temptation to create creative accounting. That's why kerajaan in US, in Malaysia, in Singapore, they come up with approved accounting standards where accountants, right, need to follow, preparers of accounts, directors, accountants need to follow the guidelines of approved accounting standards very closely. They have given very little scope to change the style. So even the format of the balance sheet, kunci kira-kira, the format of the pendapatan, penyata pendapatan, the income statement, all right, penyata aliran tunai, cash flow statement, even the format of it is governed by Akta Syarikat and accounting standards, approved accounting standards, where the format have to follow the same format. Why follow the same format? So that investors and regulators can compare one company with another company more easily. Yeah, more easily. Now, later on, we will be looking at some of the accounting scandals where how some of these companies actually use manipulative accounting to purposely manipulate accounts. For example, assets are overstated. Fictitious assets that are not there, but the record down is there. How has it been done? This has been done many times, in Enron, WorldCom, and in Malaysia also. How are assets overstated? This is an effect about your kucing kira-kira. Make your kucing kira-kira looks a lot better, more beautiful. If your balance sheet is very beautiful, your share price also go up, and the banks will lend you more money because your assets are there. Supposed to be there. If your assets much more than liabilities, your balance sheet considered very strong. So what are some of the ways I can overstate the balance sheet? For example, I import some machinery from overseas, the factory. So I inflate it, say 10 million by 10 million. ask the supplier to, you know, change the invoice. But actually it's only 1 million. Okay. So when it come to Malaysia, the guy create a fictitious invoice, right? So you book in as 10 million. So your asset is overstated because it's only worth 1 million. Yeah. So this is overstated. Can asset be understated? Why do you want to understate your assets? There are some very old companies listed in Malaysia where they never revalue their assets. They bought plantation land 50 years ago when it's only worth maybe 10 cents per square feet. Now, it's probably worth about 20 ringgit per square feet because it's near to development areas. And so the balance sheet is way understated. Yeah. Now, why do management want to understate the balance sheet? Because they may want to siphon out the assets without the knowledge of shareholders. Yeah. So of course they will try to understate so they can buy cheaply without revaluing the asset, and they will strip the assets from the company. So there are many cases like that. Yeah. So manipulation of accounts can be you overstate, make it look inflated, or you can understate it so that it hide the true value of the company. Yeah. Now, to manipulate your penyata, your pendapatan, is you can inflate your income to make your profit look better. But sometimes you want to also under-report your income. Why? Anybody? Why would MD or CEO want to, or shareholder ask the MD accountant to under-report income? Anybody? Overinflate is because they want to get bonus, they want to drive up the share price lah. But what about under-report? They want to under-report income. Any reason why? The actual income is 100 million, but they want to report only 60 million. The boss come and see you lah. The boss come and see you, MD come and see you, the accountant. He say, hey, Sarah, I want you to get the accountant. I want you to under-report. Under-report, so the revenue is not 100 million. Report 60 million for the year before you close the account. So you under-report by 40 million. So how you hide is maybe you just take away some invoices. Try to delay the invoices to next year. Timing lah. Now, why would the boss want you to under-report? Anybody? Why would the boss want to under-report your penyata pendapatan? Take a good guess. Imagine you are the
Nak bayar
account.
tax lebih.
Yeah, exactly right. You want to pay less tax lah. Okay, you want to pay less tax, so you under-report the thing. But if you find out what's going to happen, if income tax find out what's going to happen,
Denda lah.
Denda. So
Yep.
there's another type of audit, the third type of audit called tax audit. Now, tax audit is under Income Tax Act 1967. Okay, put down in your notes. There's a third type of audit called income tax audit under Income Tax Act 1967. Got it? So in the exam question, you ask what are the kind of audits required? Is number one, we have Akta Syarikat 2016. Wajib all syarikat must be audited by a licensed auditor. Number two, siapa yang audit kerajaan? Is the Audit Act, Akta Audit, by the law called Akta Audit, which require the appointment of the Auditor General approved by Agong to audit the government departments. Okay, kerajaan. And the third type of audit, did I mention the audit? First is under Akta Syarikat. The second audit is the Audit Act, which is Auditor General. And the ketiga is under Income Tax Act 1967. Okay, this is called tax audit. So under Income Tax 1967, the tax auditor can come and go to your house, go to your factory, go to your office, and confiscate and demand your books, all right? He can come in with a search warrant and take your books and under the power of the Income Tax Act. They're very powerful under Income Tax Act. So recently, there's one case of a person being jailed for not declaring income tax. Okay, you know how much Najib's son or Najib's family, I'm not sure whether Najib himself, the ex-PM or his son, you know how much was his tax bill assessed after the audit? The son was assessed with 1 billion ringgit tax. Can you imagine that? RM 1 billion tax to be paid after the tax audit on the Dato' Najib and his son. Are they able to pay the tax? They have to pay the tax, right? Pay first and talk later. If you don't pay the tax, akan dipenjara. Okay, akan dipenjara. Now, why Prime Minister, ex-Prime Minister don't want to pay? Cannot pay? Because the ex-Prime Minister already in penjara, so it makes no difference to him, right? But the son is worried because the son is not in penjara yet. If he doesn't pay, the next action is the court can apply for him to be menjadi bankrupt, yeah, and then can be also penjara later for non-payment of tax. But he has to be prosecuted in court first, go to the court, yeah. So very powerful, So to summarize today, okay, the three laws that require audit, Akta Syarikat, Audit Act, and Income Tax Act 1967. Three, yeah? Okay, let's move on. Now, we're talking about external auditor. There is another type of auditor that will kacau you at work. He's called the internal auditor, Juru Audit Dalam. Let me ask you, who are you most scared of? External auditor or internal auditor? Who are you more takut?
External.
You more takut external. Got internal auditor got kacau you?
Boleh kau team.
Which company do you work for?
Me?
UM. You're with University Malaya, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure you're kacau by internal auditor.
Yeah, of course. Every time.
So every time they kacau you, but you're more scared of external auditor.
Yeah. For me, internal lah. For the company, for the own company, maybe external.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Muhammad, is it? Muhammad Iman. What do you do at UM?
I'm doing the finance in the faculty medicine.
Okay, so you're doing the finance part, accounts department. Okay,
Yeah.
so you are audited by
internal
auditor. Okay, but Auditor General got kacau you or not?
No.
Okay, but because UM considered as government, is it right?
Semi-government.
Semi-government. So yeah, I think one fine day you will get a visit from the Auditor General.
SPRM also.
Yeah, one fine day. Sometimes they're a bit confused whether you are Kerajaan or non-Kerajaan. That's why they leave you out. Because one time the Auditor General was asked, why didn't you audit 1MDB? So the guy scratching his head, he said, he's not sure whether 1MDB is Kerajaan or non-Kerajaan. It's like a gray area, gray area. But for me personally, I think UM should be under Kerajaan sponsored body . Okay, most people, you are scared of external auditor because they come once a year, they kacau you. But actually, for most of the listed company, they're more scared of Juru Audit Dalam. Why? Now, external auditor, you can bluff them, right? Once a year. End of year, you can bluff them. But internal auditor are there 12 months of the year. They are there,
Yeah.
Okay, they are there. So they are more familiar with the operasi. syarikat, operations.
Yes. Right.
So you want to bluff them, more difficult. More difficult, right? Because before you open the mouth, they already got all the files, right? Because the predecessor already start a file. So normally when internal auditor come and tell you, got to be more careful because they would have got whistleblower telling them things. Sometimes whistleblower report to them, so they come in, yeah. And most of the fraud cases nowadays happening involve operational issue. Kalau ada this cheating case or fraud case, it's easier to cheat on operational matter than to cheat on financial matter. For example, if I steal money from the bank, right, this is financial matter. The external auditor will find out very, very quick. Within a few months, will find out. Why? Because when they do audit, they buat bank reconciliation, they do bank confirmation, bukan?
Yeah, correct.
So they will find out. You cannot run. Sure kena one. But if I involve the procurement department, I go and set up a way to siphon out money by I pakat with the supplier, yeah, to inflate the price, or I arrange for substandard goods to be sent in, or I arrange for short, instead of 10 items, I sign off for 20 items, yeah. Yeah. So this one, if they pakat very well, the external auditor very hard to find out. Very hard to find out. But if the internal auditor do field work, not desk work, they do surprise check. They come to the storeroom, they do a count, right? Unannounced count. They can find out, you know. So the deterrent role of external auditor is for financial fraud, they can find out. Because from the bank reconciliation, very easy to get caught, sure get caught. But for operation matter, it can happen for years. Nobody can find out, especially if everybody pakat lah. If the CEO pakat with the general manager, pakat with the procurement manager, then the wife of the accountant, the wife is the accountant. Own a family lah, own a family. You can hide for many years. External auditor very hard to find out. Now in the Enron case, who pakat? External auditor is also involved, right? In fact, the internal auditor comes from external auditor. The external auditor transfer people to do internal audit work. So in the Enron case, internal auditor actually is also external auditor. And then the CFO is involved in cheating with the blessing of the chairman, yeah, and with the blessing of the people involved lah. But in the end, because a new internal auditor came in, the lady, later on you'll see in the video. So the new internal auditor decided to do a good job and she whistleblow. So under Akta Syarikat, under Akta Syarikat 2016, there's a new Companies Act, and under Capital Market Services Act, and under Bursa requirement also, there's a requirement to do whistleblowing, Akta whistleblowing. And also Kerajaan came up with Akta whistleblowing to encourage employees and other people to do whistleblowing. Okay, now would you whistleblow? Another question. Would you want to whistleblow against your boss or not?
Don't want.
Because why something can fall on you, right?
Yeah.
And then you might have accident, inverted commas. But if you don't whistleblow under the Akta, you can go to jail. Under,
So
say, the auditor. But how you do it is another question. You don't want to openly tell your boss that you whistleblow, right? So you quietly go to the authorities. You see money laundering, for example, you go to Securities Commission, you tell the officer, I whistleblow, but please keep my name secret. Okay, please note that I already done my job to whistleblow, but jangan libatkan nama saya lah. Alright? But if your boss find out, you also cannot be sacked because under Akta whistleblowing, your job is protected. But I'm afraid that your life won't be protected lah. because you might kena hentam lah. So you want to keep quiet when you do whistleblowing. So it's not that you want to whistleblow. We are all very nice people, but the act says that you must really whistleblow. Okay, but in Malaysia, the law is not enough to protect your safety. In America, United States, you can jadi kaya if you whistleblow, you know. A lot of people whistleblow become millionaire. Why? Because in America, there's a reward. If you whistleblow and it's true, you can get millions of US dollar as compensation. And then if you whistleblow against somebody dangerous like mafia, gangsters, yeah, the federal government in United States will give you a new identity. They give you a new passport, new ID, social security number. They even give you new plastic surgery, right? So you will be given protection if you whistleblow in United States. In America, good luck to you lah. There's no such protection. So be careful when you whistleblow in Malaysia. Make sure you do it in a very what do you call it, quiet manner lah. To fulfill your requirement, right? There were cases of murder in later you see a video. There's a guy called Jalil Ibrahim who was an internal auditor of Bank Bumiputra many years ago. I think before you all born, which I can show you the video later in another class. He found something in Hong Kong when he went to Hong Kong to audit some loans, and then before he can report, he was murdered. He was bunuh, all right? In the plantation, he was strangled, right? So be very careful when you go overseas to do audit, or even as an officer, you find something unusual, make sure you don't talk too much, because anything can happen overseas, right? So you want to whistleblow or talk, make sure you come back to Malaysia first, yeah? So it's very dangerous. Now, there was a case of a prosecutor, I think in the 1MDB case, allegedly he was murdered and found in the concrete concrete container in the bottom of a river. Yeah, he was murdered. I can't remember his name. He's an Indian gentleman. It's a horrible way to die. He was kidnapped and then thrown inside this container, and then they put concrete and then throw him at the bottom of the river. I think he was trying to do something but they kill him before he can do anything. So it's hazardous to your health to whistleblower. Be very careful. But after whistleblow is a central to corporate governance because of the Enron scandal. The Kerajaan in United States passed this act called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, XOX for short. In the act, they make it compulsory to whistleblow, especially by auditors, company secretary, by the CFO, and so on. They are required to whistleblow. Yeah. In fact, the auditor is wajib. The auditor must go and tell the authority if they find something wrong to go and report. And sometimes they are required to report without telling the company or the CEO or the person involved, right? They have to quietly do it under the act. For example, money laundering. If the bank officer suspect that you are a money launderer, for example, you go to a bank and you want to deposit 5 million ringgit and you are wearing sunglasses at the counter, the bank officer is required to report you to the Securities Commission and Bank Negara as a suspected money laundering case. Yeah, but the bank officer cannot tell you that he's reporting you. He's required to continue to service you as a client, fill up all the forms and help you to bank in the money, but you will press a button and report to Bank Negara. Yeah. If he tells you that he's reporting you under Money Laundering Act, the bank officer can go to jail for telling him, for tipping him off. Yeah. So it's quite onerous, Money Laundering Act that require whistleblowing. Yeah. Okay. So for basically, you are doing the accounts, is it, Mohammed?
Yeah.
Under APAR, the whole set of accounts.
I only do the payment section.
Okay,
Doing
the payments section. That means you have to keep an eye on procurement. This is a very sensitive area, procurement.
Yes. Yeah, very sensitive. We're dealing with the company.
Yeah. So when you're checking, you must say, must quotation other, must be approved by authorities of limit. Yeah. But of course, you won't go further. Audit is not your job, You are just make sure that SOP is followed.
Before I'm doing that, in the bahagian dasar, I'm checking for I'm audit for the payment stuff lah.
Yeah. Because this area is very, very sensitive and is under the spotlight, no? So when the auditor come in, it's one of the first area they would look at, no? Because UN get hundreds of millions and millions of money coming in, for grants. So it's actually quite cash rich.
Lots of grant lah, actually.
A lot of
the
grant.
medic is got lots of grant.
Yes.
A million of grant.
Yeah. One sensitive area is the grant. It is properly used or not. There's another area of audit lah. Yeah. So it's involved in a very sensitive area. Okay. Now, internal auditor actually is a requirement for under the Code of Corporate Governance, MCCG 2021, Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance. Later we will do this topic. Short form is MCCG 2021, Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance. The Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance requires that a company or organization to have an internal audit function. Okay. Now, internal audit function meaning that the internal auditor, the juru audit dalam, can be outsourced or can be an internal in-house function. And some companies or some organizations like UN may have both. For example, the board of directors at UN may feel not comfortable with the in-house internal auditors. All right. By the way, does UN has an in-house internal auditors, Muhammad?
Yes, Mr. Gan?
Does UM have an in-house internal auditors? In-house?
Yeah, sure. Yes.
Yeah. So
unit audit dalam.
Yeah. So the juru audit dalam by corporate governance, MCCG, cannot report to the CEO. They will report directly to the Jawatan Kuasa Audit of UM. They will report to the audit committee. So the audit committee of UM is consist of pengarah bebas or the independent directors. These directors are the internal watch group. Yeah, they will watch out for any infringement and broken law. So the eyes and ears, the telinga, the mata bagi jawatan kuasa audit is the internal auditors. And there were some cases where if the jawatan kuasa audit is not comfortable with the internal auditors, they feel that maybe the internal auditors are not bebas enough, not independent enough, the Jawatan Kuasa Audit can actually have the power to appoint another external internal audit function. Internal audit function outsource. They can have both, all right? So they may feel that maybe the internal auditor may not be experienced to do internal audit in a certain area. So they may resolve at a meeting, at the audit committee meeting. They say that, hey, come on, we are empowered to do so. Let's appoint another outsourced internal auditor to do a special audit on something, on another area. And I can think of one area is ESG. For example, environment, social, and governance in one area that is a new area that all organizations are required to comply with the best practices of ESG. So the audit committee may feel that your in-house internal auditor may not be qualified because it's a new area to do an internal audit on this. For example, how does UN collect data on ESG? All right. So they may say, okay, let's appoint external auditors, internal auditors to come in who are qualified to do internal audit in this area. Yeah. So this area that's new that a lot of them will be outsourcing will be called ESG, is a new area, environmental, social, and governance. Yeah, this area. Okay, so far, any other questions to ask on this? I think today you got a very heavy day. All going to fall asleep already. All sleeping already. Anybody got any other question to ask before we call it, the end of the day?
No, Mr. Gan.
I think all of you have a tough day. Do you have a lecture in the morning, is it, as well?
Yeah.
Okay, I can understand you'll be very, very tired by now. Okay, okay, we will call it.
Mr. Ken, sorry.
Yes, go on.
Okay,
Yes,
I got one
Nora.
question. I
Yeah.
got one question. Okay,
Yes.
refer to earlier Enron scandal.
Yeah.
As you said just now, or the auditors Arthur Anderson, and at the same time, they also consult the Enron company, right?
Yes, yes.
What is your opinion, or do we can separate the consultant and the audit company at the same time, or we can use both for one company?
Okay, that's a very good question indeed. Now, in the previous time before Enron or during Enron, auditors are heavily involved in consultancy work. Sometimes their consultancy work is worth very much more to them than the audit work. So the nowadays under corporate governance, auditors, external auditors are discouraged from doing consultancy work. And if they have to do consultancy work, it must be a very small amount and it must be approved by the audit committee. All right. So some of the work that may be done by the external auditor is in the course of the audit work is they may be asked to do a review of the statement of internal control, penyata kawalan dalam. So if they are asked to do such a work, this consultancy work, considered consultancy work, must be approved by the Jawatan Kuasa Audit of the board, sign off. And the fees involved must be much less than the Juro audit fees. If the Juro audit fees is much more, they'll be disqualified from doing audit work because they are not independent anymore. So they are discouraged from doing consultancy work. But if it is necessary for do the consultancy work, for example, penyata review of the penyata kawalan dalam, which is in the annual report, and the best person to do it is actually the external auditor. Yeah, they just do a review of the statement, whether the internal controls are working, then this work must be approved by the audit committee. Table sign off lah, and the fees must be not much, must be less. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, cannot be a big amount, small amount only. So they are not allowed to do. Last time they do tax work lah, they do corporate planning work lah. Now tak boleh cannot because of independent. Even if it related, if they are is related to the CEO, got some maybe cousin or wife or husband, also cannot do audit work. Yeah. And the auditor cannot borrow money from the company. They cannot have, they cannot own shares in the company. Yeah. Yeah. So they must be independent. Juro audit must be independent. They must be seen to be independent. Right. So it's very strict nowadays. Very strict. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions before we call it a day? Okay. Good. I hope you find it interesting for the day. So next week, we will again watch the other half of Enron. We have not finished, and then you will also see another video that continues from there, which talks about the accounting profession and also other accounting standards like WorldCom, Tyco, and a few other cases where Arthur Anderson is involved in signing off the accounts. So Arthur Anderson is not just involved in the Enron scandal, they're also involved in the other scandal like WorldCom, another big one, also create fictitious penyata kewangan. And all these fellow went to jail, this CEO go to jail for more than 10, 20 years jail in America. Yeah, quite serious offenses. So next week we will continue with the videos and we will have a discussion to go on. And next week we will start off with also some assignments. We will start off with a quiz lah, all right, with a quiz, and we will try and do it in class together. Okay, so we will sign off, and you can go and do your shopping and and jalan-jalan for the balance of your weekend. Yeah. Okay. So have a good evening, and I will see you again next week. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay. Bye. Bye.